most about those two? Just what have you seen so far?
I haven't seen much. You know, that's the other part. I wish they were both kind of doing these games. It'd be helpful, but you know, they don't have to necessarily. So, but I really enjoyed meeting Shedeur. Like, the person is really a fun guy to talk to. He's really sharp. You can see all the things. You know, the maturity part of it is pretty impressive. I have not had a chance to meet Cam yet, but as far as the tape and all that stuff, they both do really good things on tape. I mean, they're in the discussion for a reason. You know, they are the best quarterbacks that are coming out in this class. You can maybe put one or two other guys in the mix, but those guys are, to me, the best two. So we got to keep finding out more about them.
Is Jackson one of those guys that you paid any attention to?
I've watched him too. Yeah, I think he's got some interesting talent. I'm looking forward to watching him here. I think this will be a big week for him. But yeah, he certainly has tools and traits and things to look for. And again, just trying to drill down on the people, on what they're like and how they interact. This will be fun to watch him this week. That was great. I mean, I'm not hiring a staff, so that, like, everything's kind of moving forward. And it allows us to actually get down here and get exposure to the players. This is my first exposure to them, so the East-West and this are sort of my introduction to a bunch of these guys. It gives me a nice jump into the scouting process. I like the scouting process. I think I've told you guys before. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy being down here. I enjoy watching the players. The interviews are super productive. It gives you kind of your first snapshot of who these guys are, and you get a chance to watch them all the way up to the combine, and you get one more time at the combine. Usually by the combine, I feel like I got a pretty good handle on the class, top to bottom. But it's a really productive time to be here, see you guys in person. From top to bottom?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I mean, between the East-West and this one, there's a lot of defensive linemen that are pretty impressive. There's some interesting offensive linemen. I think it's there's some good trench players on both sides. A couple of the corners on both these teams are interesting. There's some good players. Some of the receivers are kind of unique. You know, some of them are a little bit different styles, but guys that are kind of fun to watch and been really productive and all that. So, and a couple of tight ends too. There's some good-looking tight ends that are part of this process, I think, in these all-star games. So the quarterbacks are probably up and down some, but there's some good depth on the trenches, I think, to watch this week. Yeah, I feel great. Tony Oden is a really, really outstanding secondary coach. I was with him in Detroit. I watched him work. He's done his work speaks for itself at the Jets, just how well they've played on defense, particularly in the secondary. Really, really good coach. Unique opportunity for Stalker. I love Luke. I think he's the best way to put it is I think he's really talented, and I'm excited about him in that tight end role. He got years of experience playing, and young coach. I think he's got a lot of promise as a coach. Who else were you on?
And you got a complete turnover, I guess, on special teams from guys that were not going to be with you again to a whole new group.
Yeah, I mean, Bones is one of the best of all time. I mean, his energy is infectious. What he brings to the totality of the team, I think his meetings are sort of legendary, you know, around the league. Just one of the all-time great guys too, and I think that guys like him don't come open very often. They're not usually available, and the way it worked out in Dallas, he ended up having some availability, and we went after him pretty hard to try to improve our special teams. And I think as much as you can try to make improvements, both in coaching and playing, we try to do as much of that as we can. And I feel really good about the guys that we've added.
How tough that he's going to have?
Yeah, you get having coached this game before, you get exposure to him in a setting that's not kind of rehearsed, right? Interviews can be a bit rehearsed sometimes. They know what to say. When you get these guys in the classroom and you get to actually coach and you see how they respond to feedback, how do they respond to the install, the technique, how quickly can they be coached, how much do they pick up, how much naturally are they able to absorb, and then you get to see them interact. You get to see them interact with a bunch of guys that don't know each other very well, and you see how their personalities mix and all that stuff. It's a really, really advantageous thing to have someone actually coaching in these games because you get great feedback on the players, particularly the guys up front.
You got Scott.
It's good. The all-star practices to me are always much more productive watching like the one-on-ones and the individuals. The team stuff is a little bit wonky because a bunch of guys in there play together, so it looks like a bunch of guys that play together. So a lot of value in the one-on-ones, offensive line, defensive line, receivers and DBs. Just to see guys move. That part is productive.
As you kind of dove into evaluating this class, what has stood out in the prep?
Oh, from top to bottom?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I mean, between the East West and this one, there's a lot of defensive linemen that are pretty impressive. There's some interesting offensive linemen. I think it's there's some good trench players on both sides. A couple of the corners on both these teams are interesting. There's some good players. Some of the receivers are kind of unique. Some of them are a little bit different styles, but guys that are kind of fun to watch and been really productive and all that. So, and a couple of tight ends too. There's some good-looking tight ends that are part of this process. I think.
Coach, so how much of an advantage is that in terms of really getting to know those guys in depth that he's going to have?
You get having coached this game before, you get exposure to them in a setting that's not kind of rehearsed, right? Interviews can be a bit rehearsed sometimes. They know what to say. When you get these guys in the classroom and you get to actually coach and you see how they respond to feedback, how do they respond to the install, the technique, how quickly can they be coached, how much do they pick up, how much naturally are they able to absorb. Then you get to see them interact. You get to see them interact with a bunch of guys that don't know each other very well, and you see how their personalities mix and all that stuff. It's a really, really advantageous thing to have someone actually coaching in these games because you get great feedback on the players, particularly the guys up front.
You got Scott here. How does that happen? Do you serve up guys and say, hey, we'd like for them to have a chance? Or how does that all come together?
They start taking them right towards the end of the season. And I told our guys, like, as many guys we can get in these games, I'd like to have them. And they try to be fair with the rest of the league. But they gave us a couple of spots that when you're, generally speaking, when you're picking higher and there's attention on you as you top of the draft, which I don't like, but here we are. They tend to try to help you, give you opportunities to evaluate these guys. So really appreciative of both the Senior Bowl and East West of getting our guys on the staffs to coach. Yeah, incredibly difficult. I mean, this is still a human element to this business, and it's a people business. And I love Colt. I hope everything goes great for him. I think he's a good young coach. I think some things out of his control to some degree, but ultimately that's how it goes sometimes. And we weren't good enough there. And him and I have talked multiple times, and he's disappointed. I'm disappointed, but that's the way it happens sometimes. And look, we've all been fired as coaches. I've been fired before. It happens. It's just part of the business, and I wish him the best. I love him to death. That was a difficult decision, but one that, at the end of the day, had to be made for the sake of the team, I think.